Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
We welcome you to this place where we call this holy ground, not only because we gather here for worship, but also because we are pausing and remembering and keeping in our minds what a memorial is, to remember and hold and lift up. And these t-shirts that are all around us make this an extra holy ground for me, at least. So welcome to Swarthmore United Methodist Church.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Agnes Wozniak. I'm in the chair of the Chester DelCo chapter of Heeding God's Call to End Gun Violence. And thank you for joining us this evening for our first virtual gun violence awareness program here near the Delaware County Memorial to the Lost at Swarthmore United Methodist Church. Today, you will hear a few remarks from a few speakers, lay and clergy. You will hear some beautiful music, and we will read and pray together. You will also hear some facts about gun violence and the toll it takes, especially on communities and people of color. And we hope that you will be inspired by the Memorial to the Lost and today's program to join with Heeding God's Call to end gun violence once and for all. And with your help and God's help, it will be done.
When we took out the church from 2014 and added the church from 2019, we went from 194 to 206. Nationally, there has been an increase underway since the mid-1990s, when it had started to fall for a little while. I'm sure some of you have seen in the news that last Sunday there were 23 gunshots in Philadelphia, 6 deaths, and one of those was a 6-year-old, probably shot by a 5-year-old who somehow had their hands on a gun. We started 3 years ago in our chapter inviting people together who had had a loss by gun death, and inviting them to share together their stories and their healing and their pain, and at the same time to create a portrait of their loved one. And we had very gifted, sensitive leaders for this project, and we've done this 3 times now, and it's been a deeply moving experience each time, and I'm happy that we can share some of that moving experience with you tonight. We have with us Diana and Charles Reynolds, who have been very active in the community among the survivors of gun loss, and so it's my privilege now to introduce Diana and Charles.
He lost his life in Chester, 2006, July 24, like 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm coming home from work about 6:30 in the evening, and I'm coming into development. My son is going out to development. He's going to a gospel play, him and his wife. So I got a chance right before he got out to development. I'm coming in, we stopped our cars, got out the cars, hugged, and not knowing that was going to be the last time I ever see my son. But God works in mysterious ways, because he was glowing. I swear to God, when we got out of that car, I said he was just glowing. It was just a feeling that transpired between us two. Right. You know, so I get that call 1:30 on that Monday afternoon. He was gone, and the whole bottom of our world just fell apart. We rode down to the spot where he lost his life in an alley. We're just trying to visualize him sitting in his car. He was sitting in his car, and somebody came up beside the car and just, this is the moment, shot him. And people don't realize they just don't take that person's life, they ruin their whole family's life.
Yeah.
This picture here is, we did that with the art project that Ralph was talking about. And we were fishing in Atlantic City on my buddy's boat. The bad thing about it, that was 2006, and it's 2020 now. And I bet it's probably been like not 100, at least 80 murders in Chester since then. You know, it's a pain that I wouldn't want anyone to go through.
No,
You know,
not ever.
my worst nightmare. So, but
Not even the people that took our son's life. I wouldn't even wish that on their parents, on that person's parents, because it is really a pain that I don't want anybody else to have to ever suffer.
it just don't affect the person that's the victim. You know, it affects the whole layers and layers and layers. And you know, and it's so disheartening. It's so
But for anybody that has lost a child, we would really recommend doing the art project because it was the most therapeutic thing that I have done. Big part of the reason we can stand up here now without losing it. Because there was a time when I couldn't even talk about my child and get his name out of my mouth without falling apart.
You know, the babies and, you know, what they need to look forward to. They shouldn't have to worry about playing and running and, you know, down the sidewalk and losing their life. It's just hard for any parent. I don't care, you know, what color you are, you know, your race, culture, religion. It's hard for any parent. You know, that's
Pain is the
that's
same.
real. That is so real.
Pain doesn't
So,
know ethnicity.
you know.
In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I will wait the sun again. I choose love. I choose love. More than a dedication, this is an act of remembrance and recommitment for you and for me. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who call out to us every single day to remember their names, to tell their story, to remember why they no longer are with us. And so we gather together here not just to dedicate this sacred space as a memorial to the lost, but to also rededicate our lives to that work to make it possible that maybe one day we never have to set up another memorial to the lost.
Amen.
The violence that keeps our communities across this state and across this country from thriving is a violence that all too often has become part of the norm, part of the news, part of what has become the new normal. Well, I refuse to let it be the new normal. That racism is part of what continues to keep communities in poverty and besieged in violence. Because if you notice, both overwhelmingly, this violence affects Black and brown and poor communities. So for us, the intersection of this moment is very clear. And so we stand to say that Black lives matter. And we stand here to say that enough is enough. No more violence. And an end to the proliferation of guns on our streets, in our schools, in our places of worship, in our very lives. May it be so. Yes. May it be so. I am surrounded by a group of clergy colleagues that I called this week and they said, we will be here. And so it's good to be surrounded by friends. If you join us in the litany of commitment, words taken from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s April 4th speech in 1967. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak.
Listen to our voices.
Reverend Ethel Guy, Linwood Heights United Methodist Church. We are the mothers and fathers who have children who will never grow old because they have been shot dead on our city streets.
Listen to our voices.
Russell Atkinson, Drexel Hill United Methodist Church. We are brothers and sisters who are growing up without seeing what our siblings would become, and we want to end the killing. Listen to our voices.
Mark Terry from Covenant United Methodist in Springfield. We are cousins, aunts, uncles, neighbors. We are all related to the victims of violence.
Listen to our voices.
Joanne Miles, St. Luke, and Bryn Mawr. As God's children, we speak for the voiceless of Tucson, Columbine, Virginia Tech, for Aurora, Parkland, Tree of Life Synagogue, for Pulse Nightclub, Emmanuel AME Church, Sandy Hook Church, and for the voiceless of Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and all the wounded cities and communities throughout this nation, for all beloved communities torn by the ravages of gun violence.
Listen to our voices.
In the words of Dr. King, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late.
Now is the time.
Now is the time to end the senseless killing of our boys and girls, our men and women.
Now is the time.
Now is the time to cease the profligate sale of assault weapons and all multiple firing guns, weapons meant only for murder.
Now is the time.
Now is the time to rid our streets of all illegal weapons, to put a stop to the straw purchasing of firearms.
Now is the time.
Now is the time to demand that gun dealers adhere to ethical behavior that calls businessmen and women accountable to the community in which they do their business.
Now is the time.
Returning to the voice and message of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society.
Now is the time.
With homage again to Dr. King, we say, let us begin. Let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world.
Listen to our voices. Now is the time.
Now we're going to hear a call to action from Reverend James McIntyre, who is on the board of Heeding God's Call National.
I'm happy that we are all able to be here tonight. I'm sad that we have to be here tonight. When you look at these t-shirts, you realize that it's not just these numbers, but this is exponentially expanded to families and friends and children and grandparents, neighborhoods, communities. I don't even think we understand fully what gun violence does to us as a society. Heeding God's Call has been about this work, this ministry, this faith action since 2008. Since then, we have moved in a lot of directions, and what you see here, the Memorial to the Lost, is one of those directions, making visible, making an educational tool for our communities, remembering those who have died, and calling all of us to put our feet where our faith is. The call to action is actually very simple, is for us to remember our commitment to our faith, whatever that faith is. Because within it, somewhere, there is a call to nonviolence, isn't there? There is a call for us to love each other. There's a call for us to take care of each other. These shirts represent a way that we're not taking care of each other. And I'll tell you, there are 3 pieces of legislation in Pennsylvania, at least 3, that Heeding God's Call is emphasizing right now. And one of those is called One Handgun a Month, that you are limited to purchasing 1 handgun per month. Who needs 12 handguns in a year?
Really?
I don't know. But the resistance to that bill has been on for many years. So we're pushing that. Universal background checks, making sure that everyone who purchases a gun has had their background checked and that they are legally allowed to own a gun. Pushing for that universal background check. And one that is just coming to light is the demilitarization of our police.
Amen. Please. Yes.
Black Lives Matter. Talking with, and those 3 pieces of legislation
Yes.
affect the way guns are in our communities.
Yes.
And guns get into our communities. They don't just fall from the sky, right? They get sold out of the back of cars in poor communities. They get purchased by straw purchases from retailers who don't care where their guns go and what their guns do. And most of that violence ends up in black and brown communities in our cities. The call to action is for us as people of faith to pray, to use our feet, to act justly, to bring peace into our communities.
Amen.
I invite you all to be involved with Heeding God's Call. It's a wonderful group. I have been in many different roles, chairing the board at one point and carrying heavy loads of things at other points. Get involved. We would love to have you. HeedingGodsCall.org. You will find some information about us.
Receive this blessing.
DelCo.
Be at peace with brother and with sister. Be at peace with neighbor and with stranger. Be at peace with friend and with foe. Be at peace in work and in play, in thought and in deed, in word and in action. Be at peace on the right and at peace on the left, at peace within and at peace without. Go in peace to make peace.
Amen.
Amen. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, explanations can't be found. I will climb to holy ground. I will rise. I will rise.
Thank you for participating in today's gun violence awareness program. I'm Brian Miller, Executive Director of Heeding God's Call to End Gun Violence. As you saw today, we love our work. We love to do good. And we hope that you will want to join with us in our activities to also do good. We have many, many different activities. We also hope that you'll reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you about whatever, but we'd especially love to hear from you if perhaps your faith community might be interested in hosting a memorial to the lost like the one you just saw. We'd love to hear from you if you would help us with support like volunteer time. We can always use volunteer workers. And we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to support us with a donation or more. Like any organization, we need funds to do our work. And we believe that with your help and with God's, we will end gun violence in this city, this state, and this country. Thank you.
Over my head, I hear music in the air.